Hello everyone, this is your Frened and I am back with a new fanfic part 1. The fanfic title is What If Naruto Became the 5th Hokage Instead of Tsunade part 1. I hope you enjoy this fanfic, and if you enjoy this, so don't forget to subscribe my channel. Now let's start the fanfic. A collection of Konoha's most wealthy and powerful individuals sat in a well-lit and opulent sitting area. The men and women present had gathered to discuss the coming political changes in the village hidden in the leaves. Konoha had just weathered an invasion by both Suna and Orochimaru's Otogakure. The invasion had been repulsed, and both Suna and Otogakure had been nearly crippled. Konoha had not emerged unscathed, however, and one of their losses eclipsed all others. Sarutobi Hiruzen was dead. The Hokage's hat did not rest upon a shinobi's brow. Oshiro Isamu stood from the head of the table. I would like to thank you all for arriving so quickly during this difficult time. Our guilds, houses, and clans have long stood beside each other in politics, war, and commerce. We must stand together once again. It is time to elect the Godime Hokage. There are several candidates, and we must select one to support. Konoha cannot function without us, and the next Hokage must know this. Shimura Danzo-sama, the floor is yours. Thank you, Oshiro. As you are no doubt aware, 6 individuals have been nominated for the position of Godime Hokage. The leading candidates are Jiraiya of the Sannin, Tsunade of the Sannin, and Hatake Kakashi. The remaining candidates are myself, Sarutobi Asuma, and Uzumaki Naruto. The representative of the Creditors Guild, often accused of being usurers, or ones who charged an unfairly high interest rate, raised her hand to speak. Oshiro looked to Danzo, who nodded, before Isamu acknowledged the creditor. Madam Yukino, you are recognized. Thank you, Isamu-sama. Danzo-sama, how should we act to increase your standing in the elections? Supporting me would be folly, Danzo said sharply. Hiruzen spent a great deal of political capital in his final years discrediting my philosophies. The martyrdom of the 3rd Hokage has made his belief in the will of fire almost religious dogma in Konoha. If we are to implement reforms to secure the long-term stability of Konoha, we must not invoke the wrath of the majority who currently support all that Hiruzen stood for. Oshiro sighed. All of the candidates are strongly influenced by Sarutobi-sama's teachings. 3 of the candidates were his students, and 1 is his own child. How can we possibly influence the direction of Konoha under such circumstances? The Uzumaki child will be our instrument, Danzo announced. Danzo-sama, he was extremely close to the previous Hokage and, as you said, is merely a child, Inoue Tsubasa interjected. Tsubasa was the head of a prominent civilian family that controlled many of the granaries in the village. Those very facts are how we will endear ourselves to the Uzumaki child. He is devastated by the loss of Hiruzen and is still very much a child. We will give him emotional, educational, and political support. More importantly, we will give him his dream on a silver platter. He will cling to us, and in time, we will shape Naruto into a true Hokage who has truly embraced our philosophy of strength and duty. Oshiro licked his lips. Danzo-sama, are you sure it can be done? The leader of Root genuinely smiled. As the boy proved when he defeated Suna's Jinchuriki, anything is possible. Naruto stared in complete shock at his bowl of ramen. See, could you repeat that, Ero Sennin? The legendary Sannin laughed uproariously at his usually unflappable apprentice's current mood. Brat, someone hit the booze hard and actually nominated you for Hokage. Uzumaki Naruto ran a hand through his blonde hair and sat quietly for nearly 3 minutes, which, by his standards, was an eternity, before he spoke. I can't believe it. That means people are taking my dream seriously. You earned it, kid, Jiraiya said sternly. Now I hate to rain on your parade, but it would take a miracle for you to actually become Hokage. You're still fairly green, but the good news is that you're definitely getting a promotion. Naruto breathed heavily. Still, someone out there thinks I'd make a good Hokage. That's awesome. It is, Jiraiya agreed, trying to see if his hyperactive student would catch on to the set in stone good news. Wait, you said I'm definitely getting a promotion. Does that mean even if I don't achieve my dream a few years ahead of schedule that I'm making Chunin? The Toad Sage smiled. Unless they skip that and go straight to Special Jonin. Hey, I wouldn't complain about that. Naruto thumped his chest and retrieved his ramen. So, any idea who nominated me? Afraid not, brat. Nominations are sealed until the voting starts, Jiraiya informed his apprentice. It wasn't me. I said it earlier, but you're still far too green to be Hokage. Naruto snorted. You were probably too busy scoping Kurenai-sensei, that one cat Anbu, or some of the other women at the meeting. Ha, so, you can notice the finer things in life after all. Jutsu and ramen aren't the only things that register in that empty pot you call a skull. Jiraiya shouted in triumph. There was hope for his apprentice yet. Shut up, Arrow Sennin. Naruto stammered hotly. When is the vote going to be anyway? Jiraiya slowly finished off the last bit of broth in his ramen. 2 days. It'll give you plenty of time to find something formal to wear for the ceremonies. We can't have you showing up in that kami-forsaken jumpsuit after all. Oi, Naruto shouted in absolute annoyance. My jumpsuit is awesome. The Sannin snorted, much like his student did moments before. Listen here, brat. If you can find someone who likes your jumpsuit, I'll teach you how to make storage scrolls. Hell, if you can find a girl who doesn't hate that monstrosity you call an outfit, I'll teach you one of the Yodaime Hokage's signature jutsus. Naruto jumped on Ichiraku's counter and pointed a defiant finger at his master. You're on, Arrow Sennin. You better be ready to teach me my new jutsu. Naruto-kun. A young woman preempted Jiraiya's response. The daughter of the stand's proprietor bopped Naruto on the head. How many times do I have to remind you? Stay off my counter. Sorry, Ayame Nichan. Nay, Nichan, you think my jumpsuit's awesome, right? Jiraiya watched the natural back and forth between Naruto and Ayame. Granted, the venerable shinobi mostly paid attention to the pretty little thing on the other side of the counter. He was pleased by Tyuki's care for Naruto. Jiraiya made a note to pay the next month's property tax for Tyuki. Suddenly, Ayame erupted into a fit of giggles that soon became a full-on belly laugh. Jiraiya was caught up in the mirth and chuckled. Naruto's devastated face helped fuel the laughter. I swear, how can the brat be so attached to that thing? Jiraiya wondered as he slipped into memories. He recalled another Uzumaki who was on the receiving end of such uproarious laughter. Kushina, Jiraiya recalled fondly. In fact, Kushina had been sitting in Naruto's exact seat when Minato had laughed for nearly 3 minutes at Kushina's attempt to defend those god-awful B-movies she watched. Minato baka, I don't laugh at you getting all hyped up about those stupid sports. Who cares about some Tanzuka quarters? Sighed, trading for a new striker. My movies are fun. It isn't my fault you're allergic to it. God, Jiraiya missed those too. Fine. Laugh at greatness, Naruto declared, and Jiraiya nearly fell out of the chair. Kushina had made that same declaration once Minato had finally stopped laughing. The Jinchuriki turned hotly towards his sensei and crossed his arms. When we meet for training in the morning, I'll have found a girl who likes my jumpsuit, believe it. Jiraiya patted Naruto on the head. Whatever helps you sleep, brat. Naruto said his goodbyes to Tyuki and Ayame, pointedly ignoring his sensei before leaving. Jiraiya pulled out his wallet and paid their bill. He also pulled out his notebook and jotted down a few ideas that came to him for his next book. For once, it wasn't a raunchy scene. The scene was nostalgic, almost romantic. I'm getting old, Jiraiya lamented. He looked and gauged the time by the position of the sun. The Sannin had a few meetings to get to before the end of the day. Maybe I'll call in a favor and get someone to vote for the brat. Make up for a few of the birthdays of missed. Naruto grumbled as he wandered the streets of Konoha. He really wanted to learn that jutsu. Unfortunately, he was having a bit of a problem thinking of a girl that would help defend the honor of his jumpsuit. Sakura-chan was his first choice, naturally. She was his teammate and he still liked her, despite the undeniable truth that she was madly in love with Sasuke. Not like love. Legitimate with every fiber of her being love. Naruto shook his head to chase away that line of thought. Sakura had, in no uncertain terms, declared his jumpsuit the single greatest crime against fashion in the history of mankind. That was harsh, but she said that before meeting bushy brows and spandex sensei. Naruto chuckled to himself. He wondered if Jiraiya would accept. Awesome by comparison. I doubt it, Naruto admitted. So, Sakura was out. Ino and Sakura were more alike than Naruto would ever say out loud. That meant Ino was a no-go as well. I only really know two other girls. Busy Brow's teammate is pretty much a stranger, and she flirted with Neji. I'm not sure that makes her a good judge of character. So, that left only one girl. Hyuga Hinata was probably the best chance anyway. She was nice and Naruto had enjoyed talking to her during the Chunin exams. He had been meaning to find and talk to her anyways. First, he needed to thank her for the pep talk before the finals. Second, he wanted to make sure she was okay. Naruto hadn't seen her since the invasion. The last thing I want her to think is that I'm some jerk and just disappeared on her, Naruto thought to himself, triggering a few memories from his interactions with Hinata. I don't want you to disappear. Hinata's words in the first exam danced in the back of Naruto's mind. He recalled the softness in the words and the blush on her cheeks. Wait, Naruto murmured as something started to click. In the preliminaries, Hinata had offered her healing cream to Naruto before her own teammate. And I had kicked his butt. The fight between Hinata and Neji rushed to the forefront of his memories. Hinata's determination was something Naruto definitely admired. He also remembered how his words had helped Hinata keep fighting. The look of hope Hinata wore when Naruto held her after Neji had demolished her shook Naruto to his core. Then there was what happened at the training posts. She had declared how much she admired and respected Naruto. Hinata had been blushing the whole time. It was almost like Sakura-chan talking to Sasuke, minus all the shallow talk about how Sakura thought Sasuke was hot. Oh my god. Naruto's jaw fell open. Since when has Hinata liked me? Naruto quickly slapped his hands over his mouth as if he had blurted out one of the village's most guarded secrets. Today was really sending him for a loop. First, he had found out he had been nominated to become the next Hokage. Then, he realized a girl liked him. Did Naruto mention that fact someone wanted him to be Hokage? This is the best day of my life. Naruto shouted. There weren't many people who noticed, or acknowledged, his previous outburst, but his exclamation of absolute joy turned a few heads. Naruto was shocked and pleased to notice that when the villagers saw who shouted they weren't disgusted anymore. Most of the villagers looked amused and a few even gave Naruto a smile and a nod. Sheepishly, Naruto waved back. I really need to talk with Iruka-sensei. I don't know if I can talk about that, Naruto said to himself. He created a Kage Bunshin. The clone poofed into existence and grinned at its creator. Today is awesome. Today is awesome, Naruto agreed with his clone. I need you to find out where Ero Sennin is at. Ask him if we can talk about that. On it. I'll just follow the pissed off women. The clone declared. Hey, try to fish for votes. Tell them you are trying to talk some sense into Ero Sennin and that if we're the next Hokage, we'll create a fine for peeping or something. Naruto told the clone. With ideas like that, the hat will be ours in no time. The clone and Naruto gave each other a high five before splitting up. This really was the best day of Naruto's life. Jiraiya pulled up a chair in Ibiki's sparsely decorated office. The head of Konoha's torture and interrogation department's office was rarely used. It was obvious that Ibiki cared very little for his bureaucratic role. Thankfully, Jiraiya thought, Morino Ibiki had the good sense to have a bottle of booze squirreled away in his desk. I can't believe your apprentice was nominated for Hokage, Jiraiya-sama, Ibiki said as he swirled his drink. Jiraiya laughed. The brat is going to be a great Hokage one day, but he's nowhere near ready right now. I didn't nominate him. His nomination didn't come from myself or anyone I know, Ibiki confirmed. I'm thinking of voting for him as a sign of respect. It's not every day someone has the guts to call me out. Hey, that makes this meeting easier, Jiraiya grunted as he took a sip of his alcohol. I've missed a few birthdays. I'm trying to make up for all those years on the road when Naruto was suffering. Noble, Ibiki said in a surprisingly genuine tone. If I cast a vote for him, I would ask to know where the nomination came from. If this is a way to court favor with Konoha's Jinchuriki and most promising young talent, I want to know where their loyalties lie. Jiraiya put down his cup and leaned forward. He rested both his elbows on Ibiki's desk and smiled. It was thanks to the brat's bridge. The T&I commander crossed his arms and shot the legendary pervert an amused look. Jiraiya grinned and continued, it seems that after Naruto rallied Wave to off that miserable little Shigato, piracy dried up really quickly. It didn't hurt that the families of several of our Coast Guard cells suddenly saw their finances improve thanks to the increased trade in coal and timber from Wave. So, Naruto fattened a few Jonin and minor civilian nobles' pockets and they suddenly think he's the second coming of Hashirama Dono. Ibiki chuckled darkly. Pretty much, Jiraiya confirmed. They are harmless. Alright, I'll vote for Naruto. The odds are against him. I've heard rumblings that you and Kakashi are the front runners, Ibiki pointed out. The Toad Sage snorted. Someone would have to be an idiot to vote for me. Excuse me, Ibiki Taicho and Jiraiya-sama. A Chunin said from the doorway. A Kage Bunshin of Uzumaki Naruto is looking for Jiraiya-sama. He sent a clone. Jiraiya was clearly miffed that his apprentice didn't believe he was important enough to be visited in person. The two veteran shinobi nodded at each other. Send in the clone, Ibiki ordered. The Chunin bowed and exited. Naruto's clone strolled into the office as if he owned the place. Hey, you're the proctor from the first test. I'm glad to see you're okay after the invasion. Get any good information out of Orochimaru's goons. They started off brave, but in the end they begged to spill their secrets, Ibiki bragged. Good, Naruto's Kage Bunshin agreed. To hell with those guys. They attacked our homes and our people. I hope they are rotting. Jiraiya smirked. Your loyalty's touching, brat. Why are you here? The clone rubbed the back of his head nervously. The boss was going to visit Iruka-sensei, and wanted to know if he could talk about, well, you know, that. Why can't that ungrateful idiot call me Jiraiya-sensei? Jiraiya mumbled under his breath. Ibiki rumbled out a bit of laughter. About you being nominated for Hokage. Naruto's clone jumped at Ibiki's knowledge. You know about that. The Jonin and department captains are aware of the nominations. Security of the candidates must be maintained to ensure a legitimate succession, Ibiki explained. Huh? The clone asked childishly. Basically, we can't have candidates and their supporters trying to get the hat through I-Nation. Looks bad to clients and the daimyo, Jiraiya explained. Oh, the clone demonstrated his understanding. So, can the boss talk to Iruka-sensei about it? As long as Iruka doesn't talk to anyone about it. Hell, I'll be around to make sure he doesn't talk, Jiraiya said with a dismissive wave. Cool, I guess I'll head out and let them know. The clone waved as it headed to the door. Ibiki scoffed. Just dispel. If I do that, how will the boss get the message? The clone grumbled. You are a shadow clone, a Kage Bunshin, the jutsu was designed for Rakan. A dispelling Kage Bunshin will transfer all its memories to its creator. Ibiki gave the clone an odd look. How could Naruto not be aware of that detail? Really? Really? Both veterans responded. Just concentrate on transferring the memories. They'll reach. Jiraiya urged Naruto's clone. This'll come in handy for our next training session. Awesome. Thanks. Here goes nothing. The clone declared as he smashed his fist into his palm. Naruto's doppelganger disappeared in a cloud of chakra-laced smoke. How did he learn that jutsu, anyway? Jiraiya asked. Ibiki smirked and shook his head. It's an interesting story, actually. Naruto had finally managed to track down Iruka-sensei at the teacher's home. Naruto had only visited his teacher's house a few times, but still remembered the address. It was surprising to hear that Iruka had just gotten back from a C-rank mission. Iruka had, to Naruto's limited knowledge, never left the village on a mission. Orochimaru's invasion had done a lot more damage to Konoha's forces than Naruto had realized. If only there was some kind of super medic nin out there that could help out in the hospital, Naruto thought hopefully. The hospital is overworked and someone has to help Lee. He shook off that line of thought and knocked on the door. Naruto heard a groan and Iruka calling out that he was on his way. The Hokage candidate bounced on the balls of his feet. He was really looking forward to talking with Iruka-sensei. The door opened and Iruka looked down and saw a smiling Naruto. Hello, Naruto. What brings you here? I know you're probably tired after your mission, but I really need your advice on a few things, Naruto revealed. Once again, he indulged in his nervous habit of rubbing the back of his head. Come on in, Iruka said. Need anything to eat? Nah, I'm good, Iruka-sensei. Ero Sennin got me ramen earlier, Naruto told his favorite sensei. A sudden tickling at the back of his brain caused Naruto to switch several times between amazed, confused, and happy. And he just taught me something cool. I didn't know my shadow clones transmitted memories. I'm glad Jiraiya-sama is helping you grow as a shinobi, Iruka told Naruto as he motioned for a seat. For a super pervert, the guy is a really good teacher, Naruto admitted. Almost as good as you. Iruka laughed at Naruto's earnest declaration. What do you need advice on, Naruto? You know I'm always here to help you. Thanks, Iruka-sensei. I've got 2 things I need your help on. Both are huge. I kinda realized Hinata likes me, a lot. Naruto missed Iruka's amused snort and continued. I think I'm starting to like her too. She was amazing against Neji, and she really lifted my spirits before my match. So, I want to ask her out, but I know she's the heiress of her clan. How do I ask out someone that amazing? Well, you would have to approach Hiashi-sama for permission to even ask Hinata. Naruto, you'll have to be on your best behavior. Courting a clan heiress is a big deal. There are probably nobles from all over the world who would like to date Hinata. Naruto scoffed. They're scrubs who don't even know Hinata. I mean, would they know that she's trying her best to become more confident? Heck no. Good answer. That shows you respect her. Iruka smiled at Naruto's declaration. Of course I respect Hinata. You'd have to be a complete tool not to. Naruto almost growled. Iruka held up his hands. I wasn't aware you cared about her this much. Naruto blushed at Iruka's apology. I guess I do. He suddenly looked up. The next bit will help with Hiashi. What's the next bit, Naruto? Iruka laughed. I've been nominated for Hokage. Naruto declared. Someone actually thinks I'm ready for the hat. I don't think I'll win this time, but can you believe it? My dream doesn't seem so far away anymore. You've really been nominated for Hokage? Iruka asked and got a few dozen nods of confirmation from Naruto. I'm very proud of you, but a bit surprised that you have acknowledged it as a long shot. Naruto smiled softly and shrugged his shoulders. I'm 13. I'm not even officially a Chunin yet. They'll probably choose someone who's a veteran. But it's not a long shot. I'm closer than I've ever been. I will be Hokage one day. This election will teach me what I need to do not only to become Hokage, but to fulfill my promise to usurp all the previous Hokage. Naruto, you can certainly give a nice speech. I'm not a Jonin, so I don't have a vote, but I would vote for you this election. I have faith in you. Konoha has faith in you now. Thank you, Iruka-sensei. Naruto could tell that his teacher was completely stunned, but incredibly happy for his student. The conversation turned to Iruka's C rank. Naruto was excited to hear that Iruka had completed a solo mission. The client had been very complimentary too. Naruto was grateful for the quiet moment. He stretched out on Iruka's couch and the two traded stories about their favorite moments as shinobi. Eventually, Naruto realized Iruka was about to keel over and fall asleep on him. I'll let you get back to sleep. Thanks for everything, Iruka-sensei, Naruto said sincerely. Ero Sennin might stop by later to talk about that. I'll be honored to receive Jiraiya-sama, Iruka replied a bit nervously. You'll be fine. Ero Sennin isn't that bad. Well, I'm off to go meet with Hiashi. Wish me luck. Iruka shook his head and laughed. Naruto, you'll be fine, but you may want to refer to Hiashi as Hiashi-sama. Remember, you're asking his eldest daughter out. Do you really want to make him angry by disrespecting him? Hey, good point, Iruka-sensei. Naruto rubbed the back of his head. Should I have a cage bunchen on standby with flowers for Hinata? That's a very nice gesture. I'd do it. Iruka nodded in approval. Sweet. I'm off. Bye, Iruka-sensei, Naruto shouted as he bolted through the door. Iruka took a deep breath as he watched the young man leave. It was hard to believe that Naruto was advancing so quickly. Iruka had realized the night they had battled Mizuki that Naruto had unlimited potential. The realization that Naruto was coming into that potential was amazing to behold. You will be a great Hokage, Naruto. I'll be there to support you every step of the way, Iruka promised. Naruto rolled his neck as he prepared for the next step in his ultimate plan. If everything went smoothly, Naruto would get permission to ask Hinata out, and in the best case scenario, get Hiashi to not hate the idea of Naruto as the Godime Hokage. The young Chunin honestly didn't even entertain thoughts of failure. His string of good luck had been way too good. A cage bunchen rushed up carrying a bouquet of flowers, ran up to his creator with a big smile on its face. I got them, boss. Like we talked about, I got something unique. I think Hinata will like these. What are they? Naruto himself asked the clone. The clone shrugged. Dunno. Camellias or something. They're pretty. Alright. Go wait in the spot and watch for the secret signal. Naruto's clone saluted and rushed to take position. The original Naruto took a deep breath and prepared himself. He had nothing to worry about. Naruto had beaten Neji and Gaara in battle. He had run in with Orochimaru. Naruto had liberated an entire country. Most importantly, he had just been nominated to be the Godime Hokage of Konoha. There was nothing to be afraid of. I've got this. When I'm Hokage, I'll have to deal with Hiashi anyway. Naruto reminded himself and strode confidently into the Hyuga compound. A Hyuga Chunin quickly approached Naruto and activated his Byakugan. Naruto knew it was a cheap intimidation tactic, so it lost all punch. And this guy isn't as intimidating as Neji. Naruto thought. What is your purpose with the Hyuga clan? The guard asked sternly. Naruto straightened his back and looked the Hyuga directly in the eyes. My name is Uzumaki Naruto and I need to speak with Hiashi-sama urgently. Hiashi-sama is a very busy man. Whatever you have to speak with our clan head about is inconsequential. Naruto's look became a hard glare. This guy is a total. You are mistaken, Toshiro-san. Uzumaki-san has every right to meet with me, Hiashi announced from the doorway of the mansion. Naruto saw Toshiro tense and instinctively Naruto knew the guard was scared of the caged bird seal. Follow me, Uzumaki-san. Sure thing, Hiashi-sama, Naruto agreed. The Hyuga head led Naruto through the halls and into an office. The Hyuga took his seat first and motioned at a seat on the other side of the desk. Naruto quickly gathered that he had just gotten permission to sit. He thanked the clan head and waited for Hinata's dad to speak. It was wise of you to seek out my clan, Hiashi began. We are the mightiest clan in the Leaf. Our support will be required by the next Hokage. Naruto nodded. I understand, Hiashi-sama. Man, it feels weird talking to this guy. I have first-hand knowledge of the Hyuga and how powerful they are. I respect you guys a lot. Hiashi nodded. Naruto's speech patterns were very rough and showed his youth and inexperience. He was adapting well, which impressed Hiashi. I am surprised by your potential and adaptability. Thank you, Naruto said simply. He wasn't sure what Hiashi was getting at, but Naruto was still hoping to ask his daughter out. Naruto was also trying his best not to piss off the head of Konoha's most powerful clan. That would really screw over his chances of becoming Hokage. I wish to ask you 3 questions, Uzumaki-san. You have been nominated for the highest honor our village can bestow. Hiashi created a steeple with his fingers. He wanted to see if Naruto would squirm. So far the boy did not do anything out of the ordinary for a young teen. Anything you want to ask, I'll answer. I never back down or go back on my word. That's my Nindo TT Ibeo. Naruto declared with paon and conviction. The Hokage must see to all aspects of our village's power. Economics are a vital part of Konoha's strength. What are your plans for the economy of Konoha? Naruto sat quietly and fought off a flurry worry. He had no clue what economics were. He kinda knew it dealt with money. Well, you want to make more money than you spend. I want Konoha to be successful in every area. I don't know the most about dealing with that much money, but I'm willing to learn. There are a lot of really smart people in Konoha that I can get to help me and teach me, Naruto admitted with a dry mouth. Hiashi nodded in approval. How will you respond to the aggression shown against Konoha by Suna, Otogaker, and Kumo? Naruto got very angry for a moment. The actions of Orochimaru and Kumo were especially heinous. Orochimaru wanted to twist Sasuke and turn him into a traitor. Kumo was trying to take Hinata away and steal her eyes. We have to find a way to hit them back. Naruto paused. How much do you know about Sasuke's situation? Enough. Hiashi confirmed. Orochimaru is after Sasuke. We keep Sasuke in Konoha, we screw over everything Orochimaru is after. It'll also help to keep the Sharingan with our village, Naruto pointed out. And Kumo? Hiashi prompted. To hell with Kumo, Naruto snapped. His outburst was clearly personal and Hiashi took note of Naruto's emotions. They tried to take someone very important to Konoha while they thought we were weak. We have to show them that we are anything but weak. Hiashi was very impressed by Naruto's answers so far. The boy was rough around the edges, but had undeniable potential. More importantly, he was fiercely loyal to Konoha. The final question. Why do you have a cage bunchen with a bouquet of flowers waiting outside my home? Naruto chuckled and rubbed the back of his head. Well, Hiashi-sama, I'd like to ask Hinata-chan out on a date. Hiashi was not surprised by Naruto's request. He had heard from multiple sources about Naruto's anger at Hinata's brutal beating at Neji's hands. The story of the blood vow was spreading rapidly throughout Konoha's forces. It was seen as an incredibly romantic gesture among many. Hiashi had personally witnessed Naruto's defense of Hinata in the face of Neji's words. The Hyuga clan head was grateful that Naruto had not only provided Hinata with the inspiration to better herself, but rescued Neji from his self-destructive path. There were other positives as well. Naruto was already a Chunin. He had numerous victories under his belt. It went without saying that Naruto had been nominated for Hokage at age 13. You have permission to court my daughter, Hiashi decreed. Naruto fist pumped in unbridled triumph. Uzumaki-san recognizes the honor he has just earned. I know he will show her the proper respect. Thank you, Hiashi-sama. Is she here now? Naruto asked hopefully. Hiashi shook his head. Hinata is currently at a team meeting. I believe she will be returning within the hour. Oh, Naruto's face fell. Would it be okay if I stayed here for a while? I would not be opposed to you remaining here, Hiashi agreed. Thanks, Naruto said before making a cage bunchen. Hey, go get the flowers for Hinata from the other clone. The clone saluted and rushed off. That is a very advanced technique, and you make excellent use of it, Hiashi commended Naruto. It was not idle praise. Uzumaki Naruto had demonstrated magnificent skill with such a rare and chakra-intensive jutsu. The boy beamed at the praise. Thank you, Hiashi-sama. Hiashi noted the stillness that fell over the room. Uzumaki Naruto suddenly met Hiashi's Byakugan with a look of determination that Hiashi had seen recently. It was the same look Hinata had worn in the hospital when she announced her refusal to ever run away again. Hiyashi-sama, I want you to train me in politics. I am going to be the next Hokage, and I am going to need your help. Hitaki Kakashi smiled behind his mask as his target fell to the ground in a heap. That's one less bandit leader who'll get a big head. The idiot thought he could attack caravans under our protection. The mission was technically a B rank due to the now deceased bandit's former status as a genin of the Suji village. Kakashi somewhat remembered that the corpse lying at his feet had abandoned his village and team after being lured to the criminal underworld by greed. The copy nin utterly loathed the vaguely human-shaped trash he had eliminated. I wonder if Naruto could have reached this trash like he nearly reached Zabuza, Kakashi thought unbidden. It was surprising how his thoughts had turned to his knucklehead student. Partially, Kakashi realized it was because the young man had, against all odds, been nominated for Hokage. The Konoha Jonin had to call on all his years of emotional conditioning not to bust a gut at that thought. He could imagine Naruto's reaction. The blonde-haired, hyperactive knucklehead had probably danced on the ceiling of his apartment after Jiraiya-sama told him the news. I've even heard rumblings the Coastal Patrol Corps will likely vote for him. Who would have ever thought that C-rank to wave would change everything? Hitaki Kakashi quickly cut a section of skin off his target. The distinctive tattoo on his right shoulder would be sufficient to confirm the target's elimination. The Sharingan wielder was eager to get home. He wanted to see how repairs on his beloved village were progressing. He wondered how Sakura and Sasuke were handling the after effects of a war as well. Sasuke, due to his own personal tragedies, was probably coping as well as anyone his age could. Sakura was a question mark. Naruto, Kakashi admitted to himself, was likely doing fine. The son of Kakashi's mentor had a fantastic support system in place thanks to Iruka and Jiraiya-sama. The news about him being nominated for Hokage chased away any shadows. As Kakashi sealed away his macabre trophy, he silently exited the bandit encampment. It only took a moment for Kakashi to slip past the drunk and tired sentries and find a comfortable spot in a tree. Kakashi pulled out a simple seal array Jiraiya had created. A tiny amount of chakra ped from the copy ninja's fingers into the array. The explosive tags Kakashi had planted throughout the camp detonated in the proper sequence. I should probably get one of these for Naruto. He'd love it, Kakashi mused mirthfully as he pulled out his precious copy of Ika Ika Paradise. I hope he's staying out of trouble. It was not easy being a clone. The shadow clone Naruto had left outside the Hyuga compound shifted its weight uncomfortably. It was kind of awkward staring at the clan compound of Konoha's most powerful family carrying a dozen and a half gardenias. Where the heck is the signal? The clone complained. What signal? The origin of the question caused the clone to freeze in panic. It wasn't as though the clone was actively avoiding Haruno Sakura. The Kage Bunshin was simply focused on safeguarding the flowers. The signal from the boss that I can go in the compound, the clone revealed as he slowly turned to face his teammate. He quickly wished he hadn't, because Sakura was not alone. So, who's this, boss, of yours Naruto? Yamanaka Ino asked in a tone that made the clone nervous. The blonde looked for all the world like the cat who had just cornered the mouse. I'm not Naruto, the clone said with a roll of the eyes. He suddenly realized his mistake and moved to shield the flowers from the visibly annoyed Sakura and Ino. Don't hit me, I'm a shadow clone. A shadow clone? What the heck? Sakura asked. She had never really seen Naruto cower. Maybe there was a juicy story behind this. Why isn't the real Naruto out here? Don't you think it'd be a bit rude to meet with the head of the Hyuga clan with a clone? The Kage Bunshin scoffed. The two girls nodded in agreement. Ino's smirk never faltered and she constantly eyed the flowers Naruto had purchased. So, why are you bringing gardenias to meet with the head of the Hyuga clan? The Kage Bunshin had not existed long enough to personally experience truly strong emotions. However, the sight of one of his compatriots standing on the Hyuga compound walls giving the positive secret symbol was an amazing moment in the shadow clone's short life. So, this is what relief feels like. That's the signal, gotta go by. The clone rattled off and took off running. Sakura and Ino shouted indignantly as the clone gleefully ditched them. After calming down, slightly, Sakura huffed. Naruto ditched us. I figured out why, though, Ino revealed with a triumphant gleam in her eye. Naruto-kun is visiting the head of the Hyuga clan, and had a clone waiting outside of the compound with flowers. Those flowers represent secret love, in Hanakadoba, the language of flowers. Team 7's Kunoichi was silent for a moment as she thought about the situation. Memories of the Chunin exam trickled forth and brought a smile to her face. There's no way. Naruto is trying to date Hinata. It isn't that hard to believe, Ino countered. I guess, but it's hilarious, Sakura conceded the point. She was trying to imagine just what Naruto and Hinata could possibly have in common. It was almost impossible, but Sakura was sure she'd hear all about the looming disaster from Naruto the next time Team 7 met. Shimura Danzo sat in an office in one of his Foundation's safe houses. The Warhawk was staring at a wall that had been repurposed as a giant tally board. Danzo carefully read each section of the board. The probable votes for each Hokage candidate were arrayed in a disciplined and organized manner. Currently, Root estimated that the leading candidates were Senju Tsunade, Hokage Kakashi, and Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto, the preferred candidate of Root, was hanging on to third place thanks to substantial votes from the Foundation's Jonin and the leadership of Konoha's coastal patrol squadrons. There was a recent addition to Naruto's support column that had caught Danzo and his agents off guard. It appeared that Morino Ibiki was now backing Naruto for Hokage. Danzo-sama, Aburame Torun announced his presence to his master. A slight nod informed the rogue Aburame he had permission to continue. I have spoken with 3 more Jonin. Nakano Richi will be voting for Hitaki Kakashi. Kurama Unkai has announced his support for Senju Tsunade, and Shirakumo Hayama is undecided. A Root Chunin placed markers in each candidate's category. Danzo inclined his chin. What is Shirakumo-san's opinion of Uzumaki Naruto? I broached the subject and Hayama stated his surprise at Uzumaki-san's rapid improvement. He specifically commended the container for his loyalty. Uzumaki-san's loyalty is the boy's greatest strength. He has incredible potential, but it has to be honed. The container's loyalty, however, is beyond reproach. Danzo's focus remained on the large board in front of him. The race was far too close. Senju Tsunade was garnering far more support than Root and its allies had anticipated. In truth, Tsunade was an incredibly viable candidate. Tsunade's issues were numerous, but Danzo was only concerned with one. She was a placeholder. No one could doubt her skills as a shinobi. The slug Sanin was one of the most powerful shinobi on the planet. Tsunade was powerful enough to warrant the title of Hokage. Administratively, she could rely on her longtime stand and apprentice, Shizune. If Uzumaki Naruto did not win the election, Senju Tsunade was without a doubt the strongest alternative. The problem, as Danzo had thought moments ago, was that she was a placeholder. It was unlikely Jiraiya would be able to convince her to return to Konoha. Tsunade's long-standing emotional trauma would likely drive her to give up the Hokage's hat at the first opportunity. Konoha would likely be facing a third Hokage election in a short period of time. Root's best-case scenario for a Tsunade reign was 5 years. That was not sufficient time to establish a sense of continuity. Stability was paramount. Tsunade could not establish the stability Konoha required. Uzumaki Naruto could establish that stability. He was currently 13 years old. The boy was an Uzumaki, a clan renowned for its long-lasting vitality. The boy could reign 50 or more years. Only Iwa has enjoyed that level of stability, Danzo thought. Torun. Danzo spoke after several minutes in deep thought. Take command here. I will visit with Hayama. As you command, Danzo-sama, Torun acknowledged the order. Danzo rose to his feet and collected his cane. Before I leave, is the Kurama clan planning on presenting a united front in regards to voting? Yes, Danzo-sama. Danzo frowned at the announcement. That put Tsunade at 18 votes to Uzumaki Naruto's 12. Hitaki Kakashi currently had 8 public votes. Only Jiraiya of the Sannin, out of the other candidates, had more than 3 votes. The unknown undecided count currently rested at 23. It was time for Danzo to intercede personally. Konoha could not afford to appear unstable to the world. It needed continuity in governance. Konoha needed Uzumaki Naruto. Jiraiya ran a hand down his face in a combination of disbelief and unease. He was a spy master. A crucial part of his job description was being able to detect and manipulate patterns. There was definitely a pattern forming, and the Toad Sage wasn't sure he was thrilled about it. Sure, he knew the brat would be absolutely thrilled if or when he found out. Jiraiya just couldn't figure out why so many Jonin were voting for Naruto. He could understand 6 of the votes. One was from Ibiki, and that was less of a vote and more of a very late birthday gift from Jiraiya to the kid. The votes from the Coastal Guard cells were a thank you to Naruto for lessening their workload and lining their pockets. The other 6 votes were a mystery. They might be out of a desire for stability, Jiraiya mused. Tsunade Haim, even if we could get her to take the job, would only have it for a few years. She'd try to foist it off on someone as soon as she could. The only 2 candidates for Hokage who would rule for more than 10 years are Kakashi and Naruto. There were still a great number of undecided voters. Time to go polling. Jiraiya thought of a few Jonin who were undecided. 2 Jonin, Toriyama Kaide and Abe Hideki, sprang to mind immediately. I obviously can't go to Kaide. She's still pissed about the whole peeping thing from a few months ago. I don't really know Hideki, but hopefully my representative can get some ear-time. Unfortunately, Jiraiya wasn't sure if Hideki was on a mission or not. That meant the Sannin would have to, tragically, have a conversation with 2 of his least favorite people, the teammates of his dearly departed sensei. Kaharu and Homura were currently in charge of mission selection and deployment. It was the most power the pair had ever truly wielded. The Toad Sage couldn't help but be worried. Those 2 might develop a taste for their current authority and try to increase their power while the Godime Hokage sought to establish their reign. I'll have to keep an eye on those 2. Hell, I'll have to keep an eye on the whole village. Damn it, why couldn't the leading candidates for Hokage be people I don't give a damn about? Why'd it have to be one of my oldest friends and my godson? The situation was also driving home another truth. He couldn't be everywhere at once. Jiraiya would have to start grooming a successor and deputy spy master. Getting old as hell. As Jiraiya trudged into the Hokage's tower, he couldn't help but feel that everything about this situation was wrong. He shouldn't be seeing why Minato's son was about to become the 5th Hokage. He should be dropping in to talk to his student, find out if Minato had knocked up his bombshell of a wife again, and how many fangirls Naruto had chasing him. The whole situation was so goddamn unfair. Naruto deserved a family and Konoha deserved to still have Minato. Jiraiya-sama, a Chunin guard bowed to and greeted the Sannin. How may I help you today? I need to speak with the council about the location of a Jonin, Jiraiya said in a jovial and respectful, but firm voice. The Chunin responded the way Jiraiya had expected. The honorable counselors would be happy to answer your questions, Jiraiya-sama. The boy had answered with his back straight, chin high, and voice crisp. He was well trained. The adjective and tone of reverence for the council was a bit worrying. They might have bribed him with a fast track to promotion if he'd act as eyes and ears. Sadly, the kid probably wasn't even aware he'd been bribed. Those old fossils were slippery like that. Thanks, Jiraiya said with a semi-forced smile. The Hokage's office was as busy as ever. There was a bit of a chaotic energy that Jiraiya hadn't experienced since the last war. Homura and Kaharu didn't have the presence that filled a room like Hiruzen had possessed. Jiraiya-sama, Homura greeted the Sannin as he approached the mission table. We were not expecting you. Is there something you require? I'm looking for Abe Hideki. Is he currently in the village? Jiraiya asked without preamble or greeting. The two counselors were practically unreadable, but Jiraiya knew they weren't pleased by the lack of deference Jiraiya had offered them. May I ask why? Kaharu asked. Her gaze was authoritative, but barely fazed the veteran shinobi. Hideki-san was involved in a mission near the land of Tea 2 months before Orochimaru's invasion. I'm trying to recreate the build-up and how we missed it. To be blunt, I ate up and missed the signs. I want to figure out how Suna got so much materiel in place. Hideki could help some pieces fall into place, Jiraiya told a partial truth. The male counselor leaned forward. Could you not get this information from his mission report? Homura's question was simple on the surface. Jiraiya wasn't 100% sure that it wasn't completely innocent. He decided to go with his paranoia and put another notch in the Konoha Council can't be trusted file. Mission reports are very focused. I'm looking for details and patterns that might not have any connection to his mission, Jiraiya explained. The line of questioning I'm going to ask will seem trivial to those not familiar with the craft. Kaharu didn't quite scoff. I am surprised you haven't gone to the land of Tea to investigate your usual sources. There are urgent matters in Konoha that require my direct attention. I'll have one of my agents poke his head in a few holes later. Jiraiya paused, then followed it up with a resounding facepalm. Even I didn't mean it like that. Uzumaki Naruto Kage Bunshin number 7 huffed as he looked at the shopping list his creator had foisted on him. This was annoying. The boss was getting to learn all sorts of important Hokage stuff with Hinata's dad. No fair, he'll get to practice our new job and probably score a date. The Kage Bunshin pushed the cart down the cereal aisle and grabbed a box of corn flakes. He still needed milk, ramen, toilet paper, and bug spray. There should really be some kind of law against that. A woman growled. Number 7 tried to stealthily approach woman and hear what she was complaining about. Kage Bunshin had a short span of existence and were very curious. Kaide, it's always been like that. Jiraiya-sama just peeps. Look at it this way, if he was looking at you, that means you're one of the more attractive women in the village, a second woman told Kaide. It is still degrading. I can't believe someone like him is so respected. Kaide raged. Now, number 7 was torn. On the one hand, he really understood where Kaide was coming from. Ero Sennin's peeping was a terrible habit. On the other, Ero Sennin really cared about Naruto. It was hard to tell sometimes, but the care was just buried under bad habits and pain. Excuse me. Number 7 decided to quasi-defend his sensei. The two women shot number 7 a curious look. Realization dawned on the two women. Kaide was still angry, but tried not to show it to the young Kage Bunshin. The other woman actually smiled. So, you're the famous Uzumaki Naruto. I'm Tagawa Hatsu and this is Toriyama Kaide, Hatsu introduced herself. Nice to meet you. Number 7 beamed. Kinda heard you ladies complaining about Ero Sennin's bad habits. Ero Sennin? Kaide asked. She started chewing her lip. Then she started laughing. Her laughter was contagious and number 7 and Hatsu joined in very quickly. I needed that. So, you're the kid that's been nominated for Hokage. Naruto was suddenly struck by why Ero Sennin had been peeping on Kaide. She was very pretty. Her shoulder-length brown hair was almost flawless and her figure was almost statuesque. I am. Hey, I'd bet that I'm the youngest Hokage candidate in history. That you are, Hatsu said. Naruto-san, being nominated for Hokage at your age is an honor. I hope you get at least one vote. Anyone who defeats a fully realized Biju in single combat deserves consideration. I just feel that you are too young for the position of Hokage. I may be young. Number 7 called upon his nature as Naruto. I may not have much to hang my hat on yet as a shinobi, but is there another candidate whose every breath is protecting Konoha? The two women flinched at the mention of the QB sealed within Naruto. They couldn't deny his point. I'm impressed with how seriously you are taking your nomination, Kaide praised the young genin. I think you were trying to defend your sensei, Ero Sennin earlier. To be honest, Not really, Naruto answered to the shock of the two women. Ero Sennin has some bad habits, but he's not all bad. He taught me a ton in the month before the finals. Ero Sennin has believed in me more than almost everyone. Then why speak up? Kaide asked, genuinely curious. If number 7 was honest with himself, he had no idea why he was doing this. The Kage Bunshin guessed he was getting a full suite of his creator's emotions in a short period of time. I guess I wanted you to know that I don't agree with Ero Sennin peeping or being a pervert, but he isn't all bad. I do think there should be a fine for peeping. I mean, how is it different than spying on you at your own house? Naruto-san, you are handling this in a far more mature manner than I thought you would, Kaide praised Naruto, number 7. The Kage Bunshin let loose a smile that would do his creator proud. When you become Hokage one day, I'll hold you to that fine. Hey, thanks, Kaide-san. Number 7 said graciously. He wasn't sure if Kaide was going to vote for him this time, but it was nice to be winning people over. The two Jonin and the Hokage aspirant separated and number 7 continued on his shopping trip. The Kage Bunshin was proud of what he had accomplished in his short existence. It felt good. He wondered if this was what the boss felt like when he found out he had been nominated. Number 7 finished his shopping trip. He reached the apartment without incident and started putting away the groceries. The Kage Bunshin put the last item away and decided to stick around for a bit longer. After all, what's the worst that could happen? Uchiha Sasuke rubbed the spot where Orochimaru had marked him. There was an ever-present itch at that spot. The last Uchiha wasn't sure if it was a side effect of the multiple seals or just a figment of Sasuke's imagination. He had recently had a great deal of time to think and have his imagination play games with his head. Kakashi was out of the village on A-rank missions designed to present an image of strength. Sasuke had been trying to train on his own, but he had no benchmark to train against. In a word, he missed training with Naruto. The blonde-haired boy may have been a complete moron, but he was talented. He had grown in skill to the point where Sasuke couldn't deny his growth. It was a bit disheartening that he, the Uchiha prodigy, was in danger of being eclipsed. Still, the Dobi has pushed me further towards catching Itachi than anyone. Sasuke looked around him, as if his teammate would appear like a summoned creature. He honestly didn't expect Naruto to show up. Naruto had disappeared shortly after the third Hokage's funeral. Guess I'll have to find him, Sasuke grumbled to himself. If Sasuke's memory was correct, Naruto lived in an apartment complex about 5 blocks away from his own. Sasuke, legally, could live in the Uchiha district instead of an apartment. He just didn't want to live alone surrounded by the ghosts of his clan and wrapped in the memory of Itachi's crimes. Sasuke quickly changed mental tracks from the tragic history of his life. He needed to see just how wide of a gap existed between his skills and Naruto's. It had been Sasuke's plan to fight Naruto in the finals of the Chunin exam. From what Sasuke had heard about Naruto's fight against Hyuga Neji, and from what he'd seen while facing Gaara, Naruto had become an incredibly powerful shinobi. If they fought, Sasuke had ever confidence that Naruto would force Sasuke's Sharingan to fully mature. The possibilities were almost intoxicating to Sasuke. Suddenly, Itachi's words about unlocking the true power of the Sharingan polluted his thoughts. There might be another way, Sasuke thought out loud. He decided to focus on his upcoming unofficial match with Naruto. Sasuke eventually reached the building Naruto lived in. For some reason, the averageness of the building shocked Sasuke. The Uchiha hadn't known what to expect. He just honestly expected something that felt closer to Naruto's nature. There was nothing over the top about this place. It wasn't over the top rundown. It wasn't over the top nice. Naruto's apartment complex just sort of existed. Sasuke wondered how his best friend could stand the place. He approached the young woman working the desk. She looked up at Sasuke with an utterly bored expression. Sasuke wanted to breathe a sigh of relief that a girl wasn't fawning over him. "May I help you?" Which apartment does Uzumaki Naruto live in? The woman brushed a strand of hair behind her left ear. 418. Sasuke nodded and practically stormed up the stairway to Naruto's room. The Uchiha knocked a few times on the door. I'm coming. Naruto's voice answered. The door was thrown open by an ever-smiling Naruto. Sasuke. What's up? I didn't know you knew where I lived. Fight me. Sasuke crossed his arms. We didn't get an opportunity in the finals. Team 7 doesn't have any missions. Fight me. I'd love to, but I'm just a cage bunshin, number 7 admitted. The boss is still at the Hyuga compound waiting for Hinata to get back from a team meeting. Sasuke gave Naruto a look that clearly stated he had no idea why his teammate would have any interest in the Hyuga girl. How long has Naruto been there? About 2 hours, I think, number 7 took a guess. Why do you want to fight the boss? I want to see what my limits are. I want to see what Naruto's limits are. Hyuga Hinata ped through the gates of her clan's compound with a twisting feeling in her gut. Toshiro-san appeared very nervous. The other guards, however, were in a very light mood. One even had the audacity to wink jokingly at the young woman. It was unusual, to say the least. Oni-sama, a familiar voice greeted Hinata. The tone was one Hinata had not heard from her sister in years. Hanabi-chan hasn't used that tone in a very long time. I think we're too old for those games, Hinata thought with a smile where melancholy and happiness waged a fierce war. She settled for happiness. The nostalgic memories of coloring books and paper shuriken won out over her grandfather's fatalistic philosophies. How was your day? Hanabi finished her greeting. It was fine, Hinata answered. Her tone was defensive, and she nearly activated her Byakugan on instinct. Just fine. Hanabi led her sister with another question. Yes, Hinata followed along. Well, I'm sure it will be upgraded very soon, Hanabi continued with a verbal flourish. The elder sister wasn't sure where this dance was leading, but she decided to follow along. Does it have something to do with the gate guards being so amused? Oh, definitely, Hanabi answered and physically spun Hinata in the direction of Hiyashi's office. I think you should see father. Hanabi scampered away before Hinata could say anything else. The elder Hyuga sister could have sworn that Hanabi had laughed as she rounded the corner. Something was clearly going on. Something clearly was hilarious to a number of her clansmen. What is going on? Hiyashi's eldest daughter approached the door to his office and knocked politely. She quickly sat in the proper position as she awaited permission to enter. There were a few muffled voices on the other side of the door. Hinata deferred to tradition over her own curiosity. Her natural vision stared at the door until it slid open. Welcome home, Hinata, Hiyashi greeted his daughter. Please, come in. We have much to discuss. Thank you, Otu-sama, Hinata responded automatically. She was focusing on the routine to better prepare herself for whatever was about to happen. Hiyashi motioned for Hinata to take a seat, which the Hyuga maiden graciously took. Hinata, I have attempted to shield you from arranged courtships. There have been many, and if I may be honest, I have considered several of them. You were far too young for such considerations. Now, you have matured into a beautiful young woman and a seasoned kunoichi of Konoha. Hinata felt her heart swell at her father's compliments and revelations that he had protected her from arranged marriage proposals. A cold sweat began to bead at Hinata's temples. This conversation clearly had about to enter into it. I feel that it is time that you be permitted to enter into an approved courtship. A candidate has recently approached me about dating you. This might not be as bad as I feared, Hinata somewhat reluctantly admitted to herself. Dating was far less formal than courting or the dreaded, seeking your hand. Hinata's mouth was dry, but she maintained impeccable poise. May I ask who the suitor is? Of course, Hiyashi agreed quickly. He is a shinobi of Konoha. I believe that you both competed in the most recent Chunin exams together. His age? Hinata asked. The young man is your age and has proven himself to be a true prodigy, Hiyashi revealed. There was only one young man considered a prodigy that was Hinata's age. It was certainly not Naruto-kun. Naruto's determination and success in spite of his supposed averageness was one of the character traits that drew her so totally to Naruto. Unbidden, tears welled in her eyes. The prodigy was the last person she had any interest in dating. Oi, what the hell, Hiashi-sama? Tears aren't part of the plan. Naruto shouted as he stormed into the office. It seems she was not aware I was speaking of you, Hiashi pointed out neutrally. He wasn't aware that Hinata would have such a negative reaction to his ploy. It was almost as if she legitimately feared being forced to date someone other than Naruto. The Hyuga head had expected a negative reaction, though. The goal was to gauge Naruto's reaction to having a friend placed in a difficult situation. Naruto had shocked him in the vehemence and near violence in his tone. There was no doubt that Naruto's interest in Hinata ran deeper than Hiashi originally expected. Well, yeah, Naruto said hotly, though his emotions were coming under control. No one has ever called me a prodigy before. I'm like the anti-prodigy. So, I have heard, Hiashi said in a placating tone. He turned his attention to his eldest. I am sorry, Hinata. I had no intention of causing you distress. It is alright, Otu-sama, Hinata managed to force out. She was still reeling from the emotional typhoon that had ravaged her nerves. Hiashi nodded. I will allow you two to speak in private. Remember, Uzumaki-san, that the Byakugan can see through walls. The threat lingered in the room like a heat haze. The Hyuga head exited the room and smiled as he heard his daughter and the Hokage candidate breathe a sigh of relief. As he his way through the clansmen scurrying around the halls, he felt a presence following closely behind him. Is there something you require, father? Hiashi asked. Hyuga Shuichi waited until his son was facing him before speaking. Yes, we must talk about your daughter's new suitor. I have given my blessing, Hiashi said firmly. I will hear no opposition to Uzumaki Naruto dating my daughter. He is worthy, but more importantly, genuinely cares for Hinata. Opposition? No, my son, there is no opposition. It is the opinion of your advisors that the clan must do everything in its power to see that this relationship succeeds. Hiashi quirked an eyebrow. Why the enthusiasm for Uzumaki Naruto now? My advisors always advocated non-interference in the life of the Jinchuriki, in the past. In the past, he was not a candidate for Hokage. In the past, Uzumaki Naruto had not defeated a fully realized Biju. So, now that he has power, status, and political support, the clan wishes to give the boy the support Hazashi and I wished to extend to her child years ago. Hiashi countered. Of course, Shuichi answered as if he were dismissing a particularly foolish servant. We must always secure the status and power of the clan before all else. Now, there is no better way than to ensure that Uzumaki Naruto becomes Hokage. Naruto had somehow kept the flowers hidden behind his back and hadn't spread the petals everywhere in a flurry of hand motions. I'm really sorry about that, Hinata. The plan was for Hiashi to avoid saying anything specific. We thought you'd eventually ask, who is it? And I'd enter from the side door. That sounds more like something you would plan, Hinata said quietly. She was proud of how quickly she had mostly composed herself. I still feel like a bit of a jerk, Naruto admitted. Hinata shook her head. This wasn't your fault, Naruto-kun. I do have a question, though. Ask away, Hinata. Naruto's shoulders visibly relaxed. Are you going to keep the flowers behind your back forever? Hinata teased. A bit of the tension in the room dissipated at Hinata's joke. Naruto was worried that Hiashi's really poor attempt at a joke had killed the mood. The flowers shook as they materialized in front of Naruto, not from nervousness, but from mirth. He was seeing a new side of Hinata. Now that they weren't in a life or death situation, they could let their guards down a little bit. The two shinobi shared a laugh born of relief, amusement, and possibility. Hinata graciously accepted the gardenias. The flowers held the meaning of secret love, but Hinata doubted Naruto knew anything about the language of flowers. As the former, maybe still current, Hyuga heiress, she had been drilled in all manner of diplomatic nuances. Father has recently been very vague about who his heir is. Is he trying to protect Hanabi-chan and I from the seal? Thank you, Naruto-kun. These are lovely, Hinata said graciously. Naruto smiled broadly. He hadn't screwed this up too badly after all. I'm glad you like them. He paused for a moment. Hinata, I'm not sure when we can go on a date. There are a few things that are still up in the air right now. They probably won't be back to normal enough until after the next Hokage is elected. Hopefully, that'll be me, Naruto thought. He was a bit bummed that Hinata looked disappointed. So, he decided to cover his bases quickly. What are you doing for the rest of the day? The rest of the day? Hinata repeated the question. I do not have any clan training today. Otu-sama granted me permission to have the rest of the day to myself. Awesome. Naruto was relieved. So, let's go. Go. Hinata asked. The young Hokage candidate's enthusiasm radiated off him like firelight. Yeah, remember those things I said were still up in the air? The Hyuga maiden nodded and Naruto continued. I'm going to need some formal clothes. I could really use your help. After that, we can do whatever. I mean, we could just hang out and really get to know each other. For the entire day. Longer if you want. Naruto shouted without thinking. Hinata went bright red at Naruto's unintentional insinuation. Why the heck is there a law on that? A second Naruto's voice cried out from a nearby room. The unusual outburst helped prevent Hinata from entering an overloaded state. Naruto face-palmed. What have they done now? What's going on, Naruto-kun? Hinata asked. Your dad is letting a few of my Kage Bunshin study Konoha's laws and stuff. Oh, Hinata wasn't sure why Naruto was being tutored in Konoha's legal system by her father, but decided to trust the two most important men in her life. Before we leave, I actually need to inform Otu-sama of our plans. That's cool. I need to thank him for his help anyway, Naruto agreed. He rose to his feet first. With a smile so broad, it caused him to squint, he offered his hand to Hinata. She happily accepted. Hinata had finally received acknowledgement from the person she admired. Now, that admiration had become affection. Hinata had somehow received affection in return. She couldn't look back. Shirakumo Hayama lingered in his own doorway as he considered the current situation. His current house guest was not someone you crossed, but at the same time was not someone you welcomed with open arms. Shimura Danzo clearly wanted something. Hayama was worried what the cost would be. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice. I know you are about to depart for a C-rank mission, Danzo said conversationally. Hayama nodded neutrally. It is a simple mission that shouldn't take more than a few days. The Jonin motioned for his guest to have a seat. Is there something you wish to discuss, Danzo-sama? The election. There was no preamble. Danzo had no need or desire for trivialities or wasted time. The C rank was a simple delivery mission, but the artwork Shirakumo was protecting had rich cultural value to the major trade hub of Wano. Danzo was well aware that a successful, and speedy, delivery would raise Konoha's stature and draw in more missions. More importantly, it would shift missions away from Tanagakure. I will be back in time to cast my vote for our Godime Hokage, Hayama urged the village elder. There will be no doubt that every Jonin capable of voting had their voices heard. The leader of Root nodded. There must be legitimacy and solidarity. We cannot let our enemies think us divided. Konoha will brook no controversy. The implicit threat hung in the air like a foul odor. The reference to controversy was a carefully chosen barb. Shirakumo collapsed into the closest chair. What do you want? Danzo smiled. It was the single most unnerving thing the Jonin had ever seen. I merely wish for you to consider voting for Uzumaki Naruto. I have considered voting for the boy. But that's the problem, he's just a boy. He'll be Hokage one day. It's just that he's not ready yet. Your concerns are not ill-founded. However, Uzumaki-san's youth is his greatest asset. He is malleable. The boy can become whatever the village needs. Uzumaki-san responds well to teachers who are fair and patient. Konoha should expect similar actions when he selects advisors. I hope he chooses wisely. Then, Shirakumo let his own threat hang in the air. It was likely stupid, but the tone the Jonin used also demonstrated his relenting to Danzo's position. Uzumaki Naruto will do what he feels is best for Konoha. He is a remarkable young man. Have you heard that the Kage's son, Gaara, considers him a friend? It seems Uzumaki-san can reach out easily to other villages after demonstrating his strength. Perhaps he can open certain closed doors. Once again, Shirakumo noted how carefully Danzo had chosen his words. The village's darkness departed without a single word. Shirakumo was grateful for the upcoming mission. It would keep him from thinking of Kaio-chan and how he was lost to her young memories. There were few things Sasuke enjoyed. Training was first and foremost amongst his few hobbies. A lesser-known joy for the Uchiha was taking walks. Walks allowed Sasuke to clear his head, while still giving him a measure of physical activity. In many ways, Sasuke was like a coiled spring. There was always tension surrounding him. He was almost always ready to explode, into action, into whatever task was set before him, at someone or something. Recently, the spring had been coiled even tighter. Orochimaru's seal was definitely having an effect on his mindset. He could feel the power within the seal, and a very strong part of his being wanted to unleash the power. If I can beat Naruto without the seal, then I know I am on the right path here in Konoha. The Uchiha felt a wave of relief wash over him as he continued with that line of thought. Yes, Sasuke continued, Naruto is my measuring bar. As long as I'm on his level, I am advancing. No one weak could have defeated Gaara. I won't let Naruto usurp me, and I know he'll keep pushing me. Now, if he could only find Naruto. Sasuke wasn't sure his teammate would still be at the Hyuga compound, but that was his only lead. The fastest route from Naruto's apartment complex to the Hyuga compound led through a commercial district. Sasuke actually kind of liked this area of Konoha. It was clean, and if one avoided it on the weekend, fairly quiet. During the week, a person could walk in near solitude with only a few others around. Most, Sasuke had discovered, had a similar idea. They wanted to walk in peace and quiet in a pleasant environment. Suddenly, a one-man weekend appeared. It was crazy. Gamma Oyabun was hopping around and I'm screaming, in a completely manly manner, as he's trying to shake me off. Naruto was loudly retelling a story likely involving a summon of some kind. Sasuke could easily pick Naruto out of the small crowd milling around the street. He was, after all, wearing that eye-searing jumpsuit. The Uchiha picked up his pace in anticipation of issuing his challenge. The Rookie of the Year felt his blood quicken. His eyes were itching in anticipation of activating his Sharingan. There was a definite rush in facing a worthy opponent. It sounds like you had an eventful month training under Jiraiya-sama, a feminine voice Sasuke had no recognition of said between giggles. Naruto's clone wasn't kidding, Sasuke thought in disbelief. Naruto appeared as if he didn't have a care in the world. The Uzumaki loudmouth was walking close to a girl wearing a baggy beige jacket and standard shinobi pants. Occasionally, Naruto would playfully emphasize a point by grabbing the girl by the shoulder and pulling her close. Hey, Hinata, do you want to grab a bye? Naruto started to ask a question, but it died as he saw Sasuke approach. Yo, Sasuke. Naruto. Sasuke responded to the greeting. Naruto's smile continued to dominate his features. What's up? One of my Kage Bunshin dispelled and sent me memories about you wanting a match. Sasuke actually flinched. How is that possible? Turns out, Naruto began his answer. The aura around the little gathering suddenly felt brighter. The Jinchuriki and Hokage candidate was excited for the opportunity to hopefully impress two of his favorite people. Kage Bunshin transfer all their memories back to me when they go, poof. All of them. Sasuke was shocked. The possibilities of that revelation were insane. He had seen Naruto produce dozens of Kage Bunshin. All of them. Naruto's face was almost smug. I can't fight you right now. I'm kinda on a date. Sasuke was about to express his doubt, but he turned his attention to the Hyuga girl at Naruto's side. She was smiling shyly and there was definitely a blush dusting her cheeks. The Uzuratonkachi actually got a date, how does that even happen? Sasuke thought. I'm not leaving until you agree to fight me, Sasuke stated definitively. Naruto chuckled. Heck yeah, I want to fight you. There's just a lot going on right now though. I can't talk about it all, not to anyone who isn't a Jonin. I'd love to, but it's pretty top secret. Sasuke could tell Naruto was telling the truth. For one, Naruto was too dumb at times to tell an effective lie. 2. Sasuke's best friend held nothing back from those Naruto considered to be precious. 3rd, Naruto had a fire in his eyes. How long will it be? Sasuke asked. Soon. Naruto promised. I really want to fight you. But not today, Sasuke pointed out hotly. But not today, Naruto confirmed. His smile said, I'm sorry, with more veracity than any amount of words could. Sasuke clenched his fists. Come find me after your date. And don't send a Kage Bunshin, either. Alright, Naruto agreed. Sasuke grunted in acknowledgement and walked off. The Jinchuriki beamed as Sasuke half walked, half stormed off. The Uchiha prodigy had acknowledged Naruto in a stronger manner than he ever had before. I hope you didn't make him upset, Hinata spoke up. Naruto could tell she was more worried about someone being mad at Naruto than anything. Nah, he's not mad. That's Sasuke in a good mood. We're a lot more alike than we'd admit, Naruto finished with a laugh. Me and Sasuke, we aren't the most patient people. Oh, Hinata was doubly relieved. 1. She was glad Sasuke wasn't mad at Naruto. 2. Hearing Naruto admit a flaw made him more accessible. Hinata's boyfriend, well hopefully her boyfriend, seemed that much more human now. The admission made this moment less dream-like and more grounded in reality. That made it all the better. I'll talk with Sasuke later. Right now, I need your help, Hinata-sensei, to pick out some formal clothes. I might, maybe, probably, don't have any other than our standard issue funeral robes, Naruto announced with a surprising amount of enthusiasm. Naruto-kun isn't a very formal person to begin with, Hinata thought with a light giggle. I really shouldn't have been expecting anything else. I would love to help you, Naruto-kun, Hinata declared. She paused as she pressed her fingers together. Why you won't be getting rid of your jumpsuit, will you? Naruto hummed questioningly. I love this thing. Why would I get rid of this monument to awesomeness? It shocked Naruto when his date breathed a sigh of relief. Gee good. I think it's cute. Hinata's quiet announcement caused something to click in Naruto's head. Oh right. The bet. The bet I just won. Hinata. You are even more awesome than I thought. I thought I was the only one who liked my jumpsuit. Naruto-kun wouldn't be Naruto-kun without wearing orange, Hinata stammered out. Naruto's enthusiastic and sudden proximity was overwhelmingly intoxicating. It gets better. I had actually forgotten about it, but you helped me win a bet with Ero Sennin. Naruto announced. After getting me an outfit to wear to the well, the event I have soon and lunch, we have to go rub this in Ero Sennin's face. Hinata laughed a bit, but it was soon cut off by an over-enthusiastic hug. Once again, Naruto's proximity overwhelmed her. Her vision blurred a bit, but she held on. Fortunately, whoever had healed the damage to her heart had done an exceptional job. Oh okay, Naruto-kun. As Naruto guided Hinata towards the closest formal shop he could find, he started considering if he should declare today a national holiday when he became Hokage. Jiraiya needed a drink. He needed a drink very badly. The conversation with Hideki had caused a whole lot of headaches. 1. The mission report Jiraiya was using as a cover to poke around did raise some questions. There were definitely patterns cropping up. Patterns cryptology, Mill Int, and Jiraiya's own network should have noticed. That pissed Jiraiya off, as not only had it made the invasion that much worse, but it was a slight to his professional pride. Next, the brat was actually in the running. It boggled the Toad Sage's mind that Naruto wasn't only picking up votes, but actually had more than Jiraiya did. Granted, Jiraiya was publicly against taking the hat. He was in charge of all Konoha's foreign human intelligence networks and wanted to devote himself to training Naruto. Still, he was a Sannin and Naruto was a fresh-faced genin who still couldn't produce a viable bunshin. There was a very strong chance the boy could actually win. I'm proud of how far Naruto has come, but he's not ready. Jiraiya thought as he started heading for one of his favorite holes in the wall. Still, ready or not, he just might be elected. I'm going to need to start preparing for that. There are a lot of people I don't want getting their claws in my godson. It didn't take long for memories of Minato's election to Hokage to seep into every corner of Jiraiya's mind. The look of shock was priceless. Kushina's Mach 4, Glomp, was still legendary in Konoha. It still brought a smile to Jiraiya's face seeing how happy the boy he had grown to love like a son had been in that moment. He wondered if his quasi-grandson, godson, would react the same way. Who am I kidding? He'll be like his mom. Jiraiya said out loud before busting into a storm of laughter. Who'll be like whose mom? Speak of the devil and he will appear, the super pervet semi-lamented. Well, brat, that's a long story. The veteran ninja immediately shut up when he finished turning around. Naruto wasn't alone. Jiraiya couldn't spill those secrets, even if he decided he would spill those secrets, to anyone other than Naruto right now. At least Naruto had the good sense to bring a girl along with him. There's hope for the kid yet, Jiraiya admitted. From the looks of it, the girl was Hiyashi's oldest. Not a bad choice, Naruto. Your mom would probably approve of the choice. She'd laugh though. Kushina continued the Uzumaki female tradition of the brutal friendzone with Hisashi. Hinata and I have time, Naruto said with a smirk. Jiraiya sighed. Kid, it's something I can tell only you. S rank. Well, crap, Naruto groused. Even Hiyashi's daughter, Hinata, Jiraiya thought, looked disappointed. If it makes you feel better. Jiraiya was going to regret this, he just knew it. You've got a real shot. Did you hear that, Hinata? I have a shot. I could actually win. Naruto yelled. In his excitement, he wrapped Hinata into a hug so tight it could double as the world's most comforting sarcophagus. Hinata managed to squeak out, that's great, Naruto-kun. The physically powerful hug and her own confusion about just what the heck Naruto was talking about made her occasional stammer reappear. Jiraiya watched the exchange and was glad to see that Naruto was overall very happy. He didn't know this girl, but he did know Naruto had made a vow on her blood. For all appearances, the brat seemed crazy for the young lady. Jiraiya doubted he'd have to, but the sage was perfectly willing to put the fear of every god known or forgotten by man into her if she hurt his godson. So, what are you doing here, brat? I told you we aren't training until tomorrow, Jiraiya rumbled. Naruto put a slightly dizzy Hinata down. Jiraiya was proud to note the boy still had an arm around her shoulder, and snickered. I win, Ero Sennin. You win, Jiraiya asked with a raised eyebrow. He cast a glance at Naruto's evident girlfriend. The Hyuga Kunoichi blushed under the attention and nodded. Well, I'll need to hear it and why. I'm not just going to take Naruto's word for it. Hinata chewed her lips for a bit. This was a tiny bit embering. Naruto had told her of his teacher's habits. She was also acutely aware of the man's legendary reputation. I like Naruto-kun's jumpsuit. To me, it is cute. I can't see Naruto wearing anything else. He'll probably be wearing the Hokage's robe soon. Get used to the idea of something else, Jiraiya mentally complained. Damn, brat, you did it. I guess I shouldn't be surprised. Tomorrow, I'll get some of your Kage Bunshin started on storage scrolls. You'll be working on that jutsu I promised. Jiraiya crossed his arms. He wanted to show everyone that he's in charge. Hey, can I bring my team and Hinata? Naruto asked hopefully. Jiraiya shook his head. Absolutely not. he said adamantly. The two young shinobi visibly deflated. There's something the two of us need to talk about, privately. It's not something to be shared with anyone else. Master and apprentice stuff. Okay. Naruto relented. Jiraiya's tone was stony. The young man really didn't want to get a Sannin mad at him. Orochimaru had already tried to kill him. There was no way Naruto wanted another super powerful ninja gunning for him. Don't feel bad. Tomorrow will change your life. Jiraiya declared. Uzumaki Naruto couldn't sleep. It was bad enough that tomorrow was the day. Tomorrow, the Hokage candidates would be officially announced and the debates would begin. Jiraiya had informed Naruto, after Hinata left, as she wasn't allowed to know who was nominated yet, that the process for selecting a Hokage was usually far more streamlined. This election was different for a few reasons. 1. The daimyo believed that a bloodless, thorough selection of a Hokage would demonstrate Konoha's unity to the rest of the world. If they could make everyone believe for a few months that Konoha was unconcerned by the aftermath of the invasion and confident enough to stare down the other nations, that a full-scale war could be avoided. Second, the election of the Hokage could lead to full-scale war. The daimyo wasn't sure how the candidates, particularly Naruto and Asuma, would translate their grief over the third Hokage's death into policy. The civilian government had to be prepared for all possibilities. The election process would allow the daimyo and his court time to view and influence any possible drive towards conflict. Finally, the daimyo wanted to show the world he still had influence in shinobi matters. Jiraiya promised Naruto that the Land of Fire's daimyo wasn't as stupid as the Land of Wind's daimyo. Don't worry, our daimyo wants to feel and look important. He's not dumb enough to try to be the sole power in the country. We're too popular with the mob, Jiraiya had urged Naruto. The fact that Naruto was about to meet the daimyo and be officially nominated for Hokage was enough to keep him far too wired for sleep. Then there had been the rest Naruto's day. Needless to say, Jiraiya had been horribly, almost wholishly, underselling how huge the day would turn out. The morning had started early. Naruto had wanted to get some training in alone. He headed to the training ground and was working on his taijutsu against one of his Kage Bunshin. It was probably Naruto's favorite warm-up. The young Hokage candidate was working off a ton of nervous energy. Ero Sennin had sent him reeling. After Hinata had left, Jiraiya had told Naruto what they would be working on later. First, Jiraiya revealed that he was going to uphold his end of the bet. Naruto was going to learn one of the fourth Hokage's signature jutsu, the Rasengan. Ero Sennin was even going to throw in the storage scrolls. The Rasengan alone would earn Naruto a great amount of respect. Storage scrolls were just plain useful. It was also important for Naruto to expand his arsenal. He hated to admit it, but he was the least versatile Hokage candidate in the history of Konoha. That had gotten Naruto thinking as he had walked towards Training Ground 3. He needed to figure out a few more jutsu. Naruto's taijutsu was decent, not great, but decent. He only knew 5 jutsu, and he still couldn't quite produce a single bunshin. Uzumaki Naruto was nothing if not determined or stubborn and had continued to practice the bunshin no jutsu. The still technically a genin had finally mastered the basic jutsu about a week after returning from Wave. Maybe the toads know something they could teach me. Naruto made an inference. He was actually proud of how he had connected one piece of knowledge to another. Then there was the big one, the thought that had led Naruto to connect the toads to his limited jutsu arsenal. Ero Sennin was going to take Naruto to Mount Myoboku to tell him something Naruto probably wants as much as the hat. Naruto wasn't the most book-smart person in the village. He was, however, far more perceptive than almost everyone gave him credit for. The news had hit Naruto hard. He had collapsed in a heap as he realized what Jiraiya was planning to reveal. The boy had asked, begged really, for the Sannin to just tell Naruto then and there. Jiraiya had refused, saying that he needed time to prepare himself as well. There had clearly been pain behind the Toad Sage's eyes. Naruto immediately knew that Jiraiya had a personal connection to the story. Jiraiya knew who Naruto's parents were and clearly missed them. Ero Sennin will tell me later. Naruto reminded himself to calm his nerves and push back the void in his heart demanding to be filled. He had been expecting his clone to try another attack, but the Kage Bunshin had stopped. What the heck? Naruto snapped at his clone. The whole point of this is training. If I zone out, Kick might punish me for being a dumb. Sasuke's coming, the Kage Bunshin pointed out before dispelling. Naruto grinned. Sasuke was actually about 10 minutes early. Naruto had expected his friend to arrive early. Sasuke was probably caught off guard by being beaten to the training ground by Naruto. Morning, Sasuke, Naruto said enthusiastically. He was really excited to have this match against Sasuke. Naruto wasn't lying about wanting to fight Sasuke. If Sasuke hadn't caught Naruto in the middle of his informal date with Hinata, Naruto would have probably asked if they could have started the fight then and there. Hinata's presence stopped Naruto from the fight. For one, he was actually enjoying his time with the shy Hyuga girl. 2. He really needed to get those clothes. Finally, busting up the shopping district wouldn't exactly help his chances to become Hokage. That being said, Naruto had quickly found Sasuke at the Uchiha's apartment that evening. They had quickly set up a very early spar. Naruto's challenge even got a smile out of his usually taciturn friend. You're here early. Sasuke gave Naruto a questioning look. Couldn't sleep. Today's going to be huge. Starting right now, Naruto announced. Sasuke nodded at Naruto's explanation. A rare smirk flashed on his face as he acknowledged Naruto's eagerness. Is this going to be no holds barred? Not today, Naruto reluctantly confessed. The next few days are pretty big for me. I can't talk about them. Don't ask, I'd rather not go to jail. I say, taijutsu, no shuriken or kunai, Kage Bunshin, and your fireball jutsu only. The last Uchiha closed his eyes without a word. Words weren't necessary as his active two-tomo Sharingan spoke louder than any word in any language spoken by man. Naruto's bravery spoke very loudly as well. He held eye contact with an active Sharingan for a few seconds with a smile. There was one aspect of Naruto's eye contact that spoke even louder than his bravery, his trust. Naruto trusted Sasuke not to use a genjutsu, even subconsciously, before the fight began. A flare of remorse and acceptance caused the shadows of Itachi's fell message and the seductive whispers of Orochimaru's seal coordinating their tempting calls for more power to recede. When do we start? Sasuke finally asked. 1. Naruto began his count with smile. The two young men entered their respective taijutsu stances. 2. 3. Naruto and Sasuke said at the same time. Naruto surged forward and summoned a gigantic horde of Kage Bunshin. The shadow clones released a great war cry which caused every bird roosting nearby to take wing. Sasuke had retreated as he anticipated Naruto's opening gambit. He finished the required hand seals and shouted, Kaden, Gokaku no Jutsu. Sasuke watched as the enormous orb of fire chakra raced to meet the gaggle of Naruto clones. Several dispelled before the jutsu even connected. The others fell to the power of the jutsu. Sasuke was pleased that he had mastered the Grand Fireball Jutsu to the point where he only required the snake, ram, and monkey seals. That satisfaction was rivaled by concern as Orochimaru's seal flared slightly. Sasuke struggled to remember Kakashi's instructions about suppressing Orochimaru's seal. The momentary distraction almost caused Sasuke to miss the sound of something hitting the ground behind him. Naruto cursed loudly as Sasuke managed to substitute away from the four Narutos approaching from behind him. The real Naruto landed a few feet away from Sasuke. Let's see how much that Sharingan helps you out. Naruto shouted out a challenge and made a second wave of shadow clones. The Jinchuriki was confident that the number of clones had obscured Sasuke's view of the actual Naruto. He quickly made the ram, snake, and tiger seals. 24 standard Bunshin joined the charge. Naruto seriously doubted they'd actually fool Sasuke. Instead, He was banking on Sasuke being shocked that Naruto could even make a standard bunshin. If he could distract Sasuke for even a moment, then he'd start to gain the upper hand. Sasuke, for his part, was actually smiling. The experience of precognition the Sharingan provided was incredible when fighting against numerous opponents. Naruto's clones were giving it their all and Sasuke felt elated. Sasuke blocked a punch from one of Naruto's Kage Bunshin and countered with a spinning back fist to the side of the head that dispelled the clone. If he had lacked the Sharingan, the jumping axe kick from a second Kage Bunshin would have knocked the Uchiha prodigy out. Once again, Sasuke made expert use of the precognitive abilities of his clan's legendary dojutsu. He threw an uppercut that should have hit the leaping clone's knee. Unfortunately for Sasuke, Naruto, and the leaping Kage Bunshin, another Kage Bunshin managed to land a front kick to Sasuke's kidney. The kick, while incredibly painful, did not knock Sasuke down. It pushed him forward and allowed the hit to strike a very sensitive area that instantly dispelled the clone. Oi, you bastard! I get my clone's memories, remember? Sorry. Sasuke hissed through the pain in his back. Naruto had hit hard. The Kage Bunshin resumed their charge. However, Sasuke had pinpointed the real Naruto's position. He quickly pulled a strategy Kakashi had exploited during the bell test. The last Uchiha substituted himself with one of Naruto's clones. Sasuke then performed a seal-less henge. Sasuke became yet another Naruto, and clocked one of the other Kage Bunshin the back of the head. We should have attacked. Dude, what the heck? The clone spat back. It reared back to deliver a punch, but Sasuke quickly substituted with another Kage Bunshin. Nice try, Tem. Sasuke wasn't sure which stung more, his gambit being detected or Naruto's right hook connecting. The Uchiha quickly realized Naruto had overextended with his punch. Naruto's enthusiasm was a huge strength and a huge weakness. Sasuke lashed out with a front snap kick. The fact that his target didn't explode into a cloud of chakra-rich smoke was the most satisfying part of Sasuke's week. Naruto coughed and grimaced in pain from the powerful attack. The spar was surprisingly even. This isn't over yet, Naruto. Sasuke shouted as he charged. We'll see about that, Naruto countered. The Uchiha smirked as he realized he had the advantage. His Sharingan eyes allowed him to anticipate Naruto's moves. An almost instinctive plan was forming in Sasuke's head. He would dodge slightly to the left. His punch would hit home with little interference. Alas, Sasuke had become over-reliant on his dojutsu. The last thing the prodigy expected was for a pair of Naruto's clones to throw themselves in Sasuke's path and willingly dispel. Shit! Sasuke shouted as the chakra smoke disguised Naruto's approach. I have to commit. Sasuke. Naruto. The first thing each boy registered was their respective opponent's fist emerging from the chakra smoke. Dodging was an impossibility. Even Sasuke with his Sharingan couldn't react in time. The punches hit home and launched both shinobi. Naruto and Sasuke fell to the ground with an audible crunch. The spar was over. Abe Hideki was walking alongside his cousin Abe Takumi's Genin team. Hideki had agreed to help with Team Takumi while his cousin recovered from wounds received during the invasion. The Jonin sighed as he nursed a limp. The limp was from a minor wound sustained in his recent C rank. Hideki hadn't expected to be forced into being a temporary Jonin sensei so soon. At least they are solid Genin, Abe thought. Takumi, hopefully, would be recovered soon. I don't need to worry about this on top of the upcoming Hokage election. The daimyo is really pushing this demonstration of Konoha and the Land of Fire's stability hard. At least he's not screwing us over like the Wind daimyo did to Suna. The upcoming election was causing quite the stir even without the daimyo sticking his nose into Konoha's internal affairs. The two leading candidates were Tsunade of the Sannin, and Genin Uzumaki Naruto. Hideki was not convinced a Genin, no matter how powerful, had the credentials to even be considered for Hokage. Still, the Jonin was curious as to what so many of his peers saw in the boy. You clearly hit the ground first, Uzuratankachi. That means I win, A voice Hideki was unfamiliar with declared. Tem. The second voice was recognizable. Hideki had been with one of the teams that had found Yumino Iruka and Uzumaki Naruto following Mizuki's treason. We had a great spar. I think it's safe to call it a draw. The two of us were teammates. Friends even. Still, one of us had to win. The Jonin and his genin rounded a corner and saw the Hokage candidate and the young man who just spoke starting to sit up. I think we both won, Naruto announced. You pulled some nice moves in the fight, Sasuke. The trick with the substitution and henge was brilliant. Sasuke grunted. If it was so brilliant, how'd you see through it? Simple. The Kage Bunshin dispelled the second it realized what you had done. If it had held on for a few more seconds, you would have managed to clock me. I'm not progressing fast enough, the Uchiha admitted in a rare moment of vulnerability. Naruto's chuckle earned the blonde-headed boy a harsh glare from his friend. Sasuke, if we got to our goals as fast as we wanted, would it be worth it? I mean, I've wanted to be Hokage since I could say the word. Would that have been a good thing for Konoha if I got the hat when I was 5? No, because there's no way I'd accept ramen being the only legal food, Sasuke said in complete seriousness. See. And would I have been prepared for the invasion? The answer, obviously, is hell no, Naruto admitted. We've got to earn everything. I know you, Sasuke, there's no way you'd simply accept something as a gift. The two of us, we've got to earn it. The Uchiha was silent. He didn't want to concede the point, but didn't want to say that Naruto was wrong either. Instead, he settled for an observation. A team is here to use the ground. Morning, Naruto announced proudly after a quick stretch. We didn't destroy anything, so you're good to go. Appreciated, Akane, one of Takumi's genin, said flatly. Don't mention it. Naruto deflected the sarcasm. I'm Uzumaki Naruto, by the way. This entirely too serious dude is Uchiha Sasuke. Sasuke, forced into an introduction, simply nodded politely. Team Abe, Kaiki, the oldest member of the cell, said in return. Naruto flashed a thumbs up. Nice to meet you all. Have fun training. Sasuke and I'll clear out for you. As Hideki watched Naruto and Sasuke depart, he readily admitted that the boy's potential was obvious. No one could doubt his power. The defeat of Tsunade's Biju put that concern to rest. The portion of the conversation Hideki overheard had allayed some fears. Naruto had critiqued Sasuke's failed gambit quickly, professionally, and still maintained a friendly air. It was a good start. The Jonin was still going to vote for Tsunade of the Sannin, but he was damn sure going to advocate that Uzumaki Naruto be promoted to Chunin. In a few years, the Uzumaki boy would become a Jonin. After Naruto guided a genin team or two, Tsunade would likely be in a position to retire. Then Naruto would be ready to become Hokage. Even in the off chance he wins, at least it won't be the apocalyptic mistake I had originally feared. Naruto was not privy to Abe Hideki's private thoughts, but he had observed how the Jonin had been impressed by both genin. The spar with Sasuke had made the day a big deal. Naruto had expected that to be the highlight of his day until Jiraiya dragged him off for training. Of course, the hits kept coming. Sasuke and Naruto had just decided on where to eat after a rather heated rock-paper-scissors match. Tragically for Naruto, he had failed to secure a meal at Ichiraku. Instead, they were eating at a basic cafe Naruto had never heard of. Sasuke was a private person and selected a booth in the back. There's something I want to ask you, Naruto. The Uzumaki finishing chugging his GL of ice water. Sup, Sasuke, how much has Jiraiya taught you? Not much, Naruto admitted truthfully. He wasn't prepared to reveal the Kyuubi to Sasuke yet. He was close, but not quite ready. The Hokage election was stressful enough. I'll tell him after the elections. He's mostly focused on chakra control. It was completely true. Jiraiya had worked on Naruto controlling his own chakra, and the demon foxes. I also signed the toad summoning contract. Other than the toads, Sasuke probed. Nothing. Naruto groused. I had to have Hinata's help in winning a bet to learn anything else. What will he be teaching you? Sasuke asked after taking a bite of his meal. Storage scrolls and one of the fourth Hokage's jutsu. I'm really excited about this one. It'll be able to compete with the Chidori. If Jiraiya-sama is teaching you, what I think he's teaching you. Kakashi had somehow slipped into the booth with his two students. Their reaction pleased Kakashi greatly. Sasuke had activated his Sharingan and grabbed a kunai from his pouch in a single fluid motion. Naruto had created two Kage Bunshin immediately next to Kakashi. They both had kunai aimed at his throat. The copy nin noticed three more shadow clones holding the snake hand seal in preparation to execute the Kawarimi no Jutsu. Good work, you two. Caught off guard and you still managed to throw together a nice little escape plan. How long have you been here, Kakashi-sensei? Naruto asked hotly. Don't worry, I haven't intruded too much on your little bromance, Kakashi joked. The two young men actually leaked a bit of killing intent at the joke. I just wanted to let you know that I'm back in the village. I'm going to try to get Team 7 together as soon as possible. And, Sasuke ground out, there was clearly more to the infamous Jonin's tale. It'll be after the daimyo's horse and pony show of an election, Kakashi admitted as he leaned back in the booth. Speaking of which, I've put in good words for both of you. At the ceremony, all the Jonin are required to attend. I'll mention this little encounter. The two shinobi relaxed. Sasuke deactivated his Sharingan while Naruto dispelled his Kage Bunshin. Naruto nearly blurted out a question, are you saying what I think you're saying? Strangely, Kakashi read Naruto perfectly. To answer that question, Naruto, a little bit, yes. Well, I'll let you finish your lunch. Ta-ta, Kakashi is going to put in a good word for me at the elections. I know Kakashi-sensei will say I'm not ready, but still. It might, accidentally, swing a few votes. If I can get a few more, I really might win. Naruto looked down to hide his triumphant grin, and noticed that his sensei had taken his last ray tempura. Sasuke noticed Naruto's dark look and flicked his gaze to his own food. Kakashi had stolen his last tomato and okaka omusubi. Kakashi. Both students looked up and noticed that their teacher had disappeared with a shunshin. I kinda hate him sometimes. Naruto lamented. Sasuke nodded in agreement. Still, it's nice to know Kakashi-sensei is supporting us. I'm still going to put him on a week of D ranks for stealing my tempura. Lunch had actually ended on a high note. Naruto had pretty much convinced Sasuke to join him in a vengeance prank to punish Kakashi for stealing their food. Naruto wasn't sure how he was going to pull off a prank on a world-renowned Jonin like Kakashi. Still, it would be fun, and hopefully Naruto would get to abuse a bit of his future political power. I might even cackle. As Naruto exited his apartment post-gathering some training supplies, he wondered exactly how Ero Sennin would teach him the Rasengan. Naruto was hoping that he'd be able to master the Just You quickly. That way the Hokage candidate could move on to the fourth's other signature jutsu. It would be so cool to learn the Flying Thunder God. Sadly, that required crazy chakra control. Naruto knew one of his areas to work on was his chakra control. I guess it'll be a while before I learn that jutsu. Naruto lamented, but took comfort in the fact that he would eventually learn that unstoppable jutsu. Hey, Naruto. Naruto recognized Kiba's voice, especially since Akamaru barked to emphasize the point. The possible Godime Hokage turned on the balls of his feet and grinned. He actually kinda liked Team 8 as a whole. Hinata, as Naruto had said at Training Ground 3 before his match with Neji, was the kind of person Naruto liked. Shino struck him as dependable, and Kiba was sometimes cool. What's up? Naruto asked. He immediately brightened as he focused on the girl he had a semi-date with yesterday. Hey, Hinata, I hope you had fun yesterday. I had a lovely time, Hinata answered. She was blushing furiously as being put on the spot was something that made her uncomfortable. Kiba and Shino looked back and forth between the shinobi present. Their gaze eventually settled on their teammate. Naruto-kun and I had an unplanned date. Truly? Shino asked protectively. Naruto nodded. Yeah, Hinata and I had a semi-date. What the hell is a semi-date? Kiba snapped. We just sort of hung out, Naruto explained. A real date is kinda like a prank. It takes planning and has to be unique. Team 8 accepted that explanation. That explanation made sense, even while they were a bit uncomfortable with how Naruto compared a date with a prank. Naruto made small talk, and explained to Kiba that he had just had a spar with Sasuke and was off to train with Jiraiya. The Inuzuka Genin and Ninken were both disappointed that their rematch with Naruto would have to wait. That went well, Naruto thought. Kiba and Akamaru had been a tough out in the preliminaries. Naruto was confident in his improvements since then and was eager for another shot at those two. Sadly, it would have to wait for some time. Naruto did not head straight to the training ground Jiraiya had set up for their lesson. The first place Naruto checked was the area overlooking the women's public bath. Jiraiya was exactly where Naruto expected to find him.